I was gonna say something about it being tank top season in Florida again, but then I realized that it's been tank top season in Florida, like, since February. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about what I read in June. I sat down to do all of my June, put all of my June books into Goodreads and get all of that, and I read or finished a surprising amount of books in the month of June. The first book I finished in June was A Makeup Breakup by Lily Manon. This is a contemporary romance. It's about two rival developers who had a thing back at a conference, and then they come back and the main character has this app called Makeup, and then she thinks that the guy at this conference that she met at this conference, she thinks that he has actually stolen her app idea to make this app called Breakup. So this is one that I did read physically. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I liked it. There were some things that I think would have been more effective if we had had a dual point of view story. This was only from Annika's point of view. So there are certain things that happen towards the end that feel rushed and slightly is it superficial? Forced? Artificial on the guy's side of things. Like, you can see him kind of getting there through conversations, but it just, like, considering the third act breakup argument that they have and then where they are at the end of the book, it just felt like it was a complete 180. I would have liked to see his point of view so that we could kind of, like, it didn't feel so surprising. Everything that happened on her end, every week we see her work through all of this. I would have just liked to see, what's his name? Hudson work through some of this stuff. That said, I really did like Annika's relationship with her father. I absolutely adored her relationship with her best friend. Like, Lily Manon, also known as Sandhya Menon, of the Wind Dimple Met Rishi. Yes, that's the order. Yes, Wind Dimple Met Rishi books. She's really good at creating characters and creating character relationships. One of the things that did bug me at the beginning, and another reason I think it would have helped to see Hudson's point of view, Hudson's point of view, was just that the back and forth kind of teasing that they do, it gets a little unprofessional. Like, they're continually sabotaging each other at the beginning of this book, and it frustrated me to some extent because there were some things that, like, yes, that's cute, that's something that's, like, playful and you can do to kind of sabotage a rival, and then there are other things that it was just like, that is not, like, that is unethical to do. Why did you do that? And that kind of got on me, but she ended up selling me on him later. The next book I finished was A Pride and Premeditation by Tears of Price. Pride and Premeditation is a YA historical fiction remix of the original Pride and Prejudice. Lizzie's father is a barrister. I think that's the word. I think he's a barrister, not a solicitor. Lizzie's father is involved as what we would call a lawyer today, but also because of the way the laws are, kind of has to do his own private detection for his clients. Like, he has to go out and gather clues and stuff, or gather the evidence, and Lizzie, in fact, is really good at gathering this evidence, and she really wants to become a barrister. She wants to be a female barrister, even though that's really not doable in this time period, but she is really good at going out, at getting information, at figuring out, picking at the little pieces of the cases that they get so that she is able to build a defense for their clients. I gave this 4 stars. This one I did listen to as an audiobook, and I really enjoyed the narration. I thought it was really well done. I absolutely adored this. Like, just, I am very, like, loose with how strict you have to be when you are doing a Pride and Prejudice retelling. As long as you are good at, like, getting the right elements, getting the right relationship between Lizzie and her sisters, between Lizzie and Darcy, and kind of working through all of that, I really don't care what you do with the plot, how you mix those kinds of things up. So I really enjoyed seeing the different ways that this was adapted from the original kind of countryside, very slow moving plot and ambiance and setting that we have in the original Pride and Prejudice to something that is set in London. I really liked how she brought the characters. I liked what they did with Lady Catherine. I liked what she did with Mr. Collins being Mr. Bennet's partner to Lizzie's dismay. I liked, oh my god, if you were frustrated in the original Pride and Prejudice between kind of Lizzie and Charlotte's falling out and how that resolves, you will love this, because I felt like this was done so much better. I just, like, she took what Jane Austen did and she was like, let's just twisted. I loved how we really get to delve into Lizzie and Darcy as characters. It's less about the plot. I mean, it is about the plot because it's a mystery plot, but like we really get to see some of their weaknesses and their insecurities besides the traditional Pride and Prejudice ones that you see. To everyone's surprise, I liked what we did with Wickham. Yes, I am surprised that sentence just came out of my mouth, and that's because, well, I can't tell you because it's a spoiler, but like the Wickham plot's resolval, the way they resolve it, made me happy. So highly recommend. This is really fun and I can't wait to get to the second book. So after that, I finished the Bromance book club by Alyssa K. Adams. I have been wanting to start this for forever and I finally just like, you know what? Screw TBRs. I'm gonna read the book that I want to read. Bromance book club is an adult romance. It is a series of books and the first book is about... Do I pay attention to people's names? No, clearly not. Gavin and Thea. Gavin has a terrible reaction to the fact that his wife has been faking it for their entire marriage. I'm just going to assume that all of the adults in the room are going to know what I mean when I say a woman has been faking it with her husband. Long story short, their marriage is on the rocks because he has a terrible reaction. He reacts like a man whose ego has been kicked in the balls, and so his wife kicks him out and is like, okay, I'm done. I am done. And then his friends on his baseball team, oh, by the way, he is the star player on the Nashville Legends. A friend of his on the team is like, here, I'm gonna help you fix your marriage. And he brings him into this book club that they call the Bromance book club, where they read romance novels to kind of figure out how to please their wives and speak woman. I really like the idea of reading romance novels to figure out how to please your wives. I didn't really like the idea of learning how to speak woman. We are human beings, just talk to us. So I read this physically and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I absolutely adored it. It was so much fun to read. I really liked, because I was worried there for a minute, because it was one of those things that like, maybe we should have a conversation about this, but then the way that this was like structured, you completely understood why that was the last straw for Thea, and I absolutely adored that. I thought it worked really well with the plot. I also liked that she didn't make it easy for Gavin. Like, it wasn't one of those things where he's like, oh, I'm sorry, and comes crawling back, and she's like, oh, okay. She has to sit and wrestle with what do I feel? What is the right course of action? The one thing that bugged me is we get snippets of the romance novel that he's reading, and like, the guy in the romance novel was kind of trash, and I was just like, no wonder your wife doesn't want to be married to you. Why are you the way you are? So it was annoying at the beginning, and then you got to the end, and I was like, okay, but I would actually, like, no, but I want to read from here. I want to read the rest of this part. Please. This was cute. It was fun. If you're looking for something that's going to go a little deeper in your romance, but it's not going to be too heavy, definitely read this. We're only like 3 books in and I've already got a hand cramp. Next book that I finished in June was Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know by Samira Ahmed. So this is a YA contemporary. It is about Glare. It's about Glare, apparently. This is a YA contemporary about Kayum. She wants to be a historian, and she has figured out, like, she thinks that she has found a connection between Alexandre Dumas and Delacroix, who is a very famous French painter. That kind of crashes and burns in like this big national contest. She feels like her entire career as a historian is over. At the tender age of 18, she can't come back from it, and she's just in the dumps in Paris with her family because they vacation there every year, and she ends up meeting Alexandre Dumas' great grandson, who's also named Alexandre Dumas. They decide that they are going to team up together to figure out what is this true? Because he kind of thinks she's onto something. Like, he and his family think she's onto something. This was fun. I really enjoyed the fact that we have a modern storyline, and then we also have kind of a little bit of a glimpse from the past. I liked the way this romance progressed between Kayum and Alexandre. It was felt very teenage and young, and it was fast, yes, and they're like, you know, feeling things and thinking things, and like, but it was also like, hey, we're 2 teenagers in a dusty library, making out seems like a good idea right now, and I'm like, that seems very teenage. I was never in those positions because I was a boring teenager apparently, but like, it seemed very, very like authentic to how actual people maybe sometimes approach romance. I also really liked that the 3rd act breakup that happens is not so much like it's not that one person wronged the other. It is very much that they were both kind of shady in their relationship because they both have ulterior motives in getting to know each other. It's kind of obvious on Kayum's side because she knows about it and she talks about it. Alexandre's side, it gets a little bit like, you kind of have to piece that together, but it makes sense. There wasn't anything that was like a huge, giant surprise, but it was really fun watching these two kids kind of go about Paris and go about the French countryside. So you may be able to guess what the next book I finished was by the giant gaping hole that is now in my bookshelf, but I finished finally Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. How long have I been reading this? Since February. I haven't put any of my tabs in yet. I just have my post-it notes, but I finished my reread of Siege and Storm. I only have to do Ruin and Rising, and I can move on to the Six of Crows, you all. This is a YA fantasy. The first book follows Alina, and in the first book, she discovers that she has a magical power. In this world, there are people called the Grisha. They're able to work with magic. They have various different powers. Some of them can work with like materials like metals. Some of them work with like the elements. Alina finds out in trying to save her best friend Mal that she has this magical power, and she's whisked off to the little palace to train as a Grisha. Due to the events of the last book, she finds herself in a unique position where she's got a little bit more power in her face-off against the Darkling, who is the villain of the series, in case anyone was unclear about that fact. So I gave this 4 stars, obviously, because I was taking notes. I reread it physically. I am enjoying this reread so much. I think there's definitely stuff that I didn't pay attention to when it comes to Alina and what she wants and who she is as a character. I don't remember my exact impressions of her in the first time I read it. Like, I wasn't mad about reading it, but I do remember feeling like this particular series fell flat the first time, and this time reading it, I'm like, you know, it was really unfair of me to be comparing it to Six of Crows because that's a completely different story. I think for the story that is being told with the character that is telling it, she is doing a fantastic job. I love the struggle that Alina is having with her power in this book. I think the first book was really about Alina trying to accept the fact that she is a Grisha, and then this book is really about her learning to work with, like, what does that make her if she has this extensive power that no one else has. I also think we see a lot of her isolation in this book. The fact that she has been set apart by the particular power that she has because she is the only one with it, and how hard it is on her. I will say, I still don't see why people are so mad at Mal. I love the main characters in this series. I love the introduction of, I'm not gonna say who, but like there's an introduction of a character that I think is done really well. I didn't find him as charming, quite as charming this time around as the first time, just because he is kind of duplicitous and a little bit manipulative, and I don't know how I feel about that. I think that he and Alina kind of, as they move forward, do come to an understanding, and that kind of manipulativeness is countered, but I just, like, I wasn't as charmed by him the first time as I was the second time, because he's out there baiting people, and I'm just like, sir, are you insecure as well? Too many insecure dudes in this book. I really enjoy the magic system that Leigh Bardugo has set up in this world. I like the fact that it does do the traditional elements, but it's also much more than that. It's about being able to manipulate nature at whatever form it is, and they consider nature, what you're able to manipulate, like things that we would not necessarily, like metal, we would not necessarily consider that natural. But it is. It occurs in nature. So I really enjoyed the fact that she is so, like, she has rules to this, but how wide-reaching this particular magic is and the ways that she thinks to use it. All right, the next book that I finished was City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This took me from February to June to read. I finally finished like the last 100 pages in June. This is an adult fantasy about Nahri. She grew up in Cairo. She has been an orphan all of her life, and she's also kind of like a con artist. She does not believe in magic. However, in conning a family at one point, she accidentally ends up summoning one of the jinn. Unfortunately, Dara is not the only jinn's eye that she ends up catching, so she has to go on the run with him. He takes her to, I don't even remember the name of it, but he takes her to the magical city where the jinn live, like their dimension, and she is having to navigate some of the political stuff there to kind of like protect herself, to not lose her life, all of that good stuff. There is a lot in this book. The rating for this is kind of tricky because I found some stuff out that affects how I feel about the book and whether or not I want to continue on. This is a 4-star book for sure if you are not me. I personally would give it 3 stars just because I don't like what she has done with the thing or what she's going to do. I was loving it until I found out about the, I found out about the thing because I started kind of suspecting, and I was like, you know, I would rather know going into this because I'm just like that. We'll see. We'll see. I could be sold on it in books 2 and 3 if I continue on. I loved the world building in this. I love the magic system. I love the way that she does the politics. We have these 3 different points of view. We're seeing various different parts of the politics in this world that Nari ends up being thrown into. We're seeing a lot of social like commentary and things that are going on in the city, and how like you're seeing how poorly ruling is being handled by the current rulers, but also the fact that like a lot of their choices, like none of their choices are easy. If you like immersive worlds, if you like a good character building, this is going to be a great story for you. If romance is not like something that is main in your like what you want, probably a good story for you. Also, if you like political fantasy, definitely pick this up. The next book that I finished as an audiobook, and that was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. This is an adult thriller about a lot of things. This is about 2 people. Mikael Blomkvist he's a reporter, and he has been hired to look into the death of this girl who died like 40 years ago, something like that. It's been a couple decades since she she just went missing. No one was able to find her body, that kind of thing. We also follow Elizabeth Salander, who is a private investigator. She is hired to look into Mikael, and then their paths end up crossing as he is trying to figure out this mystery. It's a very, it's a complicated plot. They each have their own personal things that they're handling, and then they have this main overarching mystery that they end up getting drawn into. I ended up giving this 3 stars. Like I said, I listened to it as an audiobook, which was a very good audiobook. I liked it. I actually didn't mind most of the female voices that he did. The one thing I will say is it is slow to start. I was completely I almost DNF'd this during the first chapter because we're going into some stuff that happened to Mikael and why he is in the, it's setting up why he is in the position that he is in. I would have preferred that we jumped into the action and then we backtracked versus all of this stuff, because I really did not care about him. Whereas when we get to Salander's chapter, like the second chapter, I cared about Salander within a few pages. I liked her. She was an interesting character to me. So that was one of those things I was just like, so he knows how to do this. He knows how to make me connected to a character. They didn't at the beginning of the book. So I was kind of iffy for the first third of the novel, and then the second third of the novel really grabs you and you're invested in this mystery and you're trying to figure out all of the different moving pieces that are going on. There are certain plots that happen in here that I am pretty sure we will see more of in books 2 and 3. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. There were places I didn't like, definitely places where it was written by a man, definitely, but there weren't a lot of, they weren't egregious and they weren't like a lot. It was one of those things that you're just like, oh yeah, I do definitely wrote this because of simple descriptions, but it didn't make me mad. It didn't throw me out of the story. It wasn't specifically misogynistic. So a lot of this is about the rate of intimate partner violence in Sweden. It just goes into a lot of stuff. So I will say, trigger warning, there is a rape scene in here. It's driving home a point. It's revealing something about the character, but I don't think we needed to go quite as far as we went in this book. I just say that this is the one thing that I was like, maybe we could have stepped back on that a little bit. It does have a lot to say if you have been paying attention at all to what's going on with Britney Spears. It was really odd that I was reading this book because it does have a lot to say about conservatorships. The thriller part is good. I liked the 2 main characters by the time we got to the end of the book. I'm not sure how I feel about certain relationship aspects between certain characters in here, but we'll get there when we get there. So the next book that I read is another one of the ones that I started in February, and I'm finally finishing. I am so proud of myself that I finished those 3 books, finally got them off of my currently reading. That book is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. Yes, I did rehearse that multiple times, in case you're wondering. This was so good. This is nonfiction. It is I guess a memoir written by Austin Channing Brown talking about her time in the church. I'm not sure if it sounds like probably it was an evangelical setting, but she's been a consultant for various churches through her career. This is about a lot of her experience both as a Black woman in a majority white field. It's also about her experience as she is she is being approached by churches, being hired, being asked to do things to help racial relations, and the pushback that she receives from doing that work. It's a lot. It is a difficult book to read if you are anywhere in the church. It really is going to make you think. I think that every single Christian who is white or non-Black should read this book. You just need to sit and you need to read this book, and you need to look at how she applies her relationship and her theology with the church to her life and how she views the gospel. The last 2 chapters of this book were absolutely immaculate because we have this whole book talking about her struggle, what she has been through, the frustration that she has felt trying to move racial relations in the church forward. And then she takes it around and she brings it back around to Jesus. Just the way that she sits down and she says, okay, this is what justice looks like from a Christian perspective. If we look at the Bible, this is what justice is supposed to look like. This is what reconciliation is supposed to look like. And I just, like, it was just so refreshing to see her sit down and take a religion that I have been wrestling with and say, no, but this is what it is. This is why Christians should be involved in this fight. And I really appreciated that. I am very glad that she sat down and she wrote this book. It is short. It is easy to read. It will not take you long. There was just so much in here that I just had to sit and think about. Like, it really made me sit and think about myself and really examine, like, every time I read a book like this, but, like, it really made me sit and examine and go, okay, is what I am doing really helping? Am I really doing constructive things, or am I just whinging? So, just pick it up. It is an amazing book. The next book we need to talk about is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Maltar and Max. Is it Max or Maxwell? It's just Max Gladstone. This is adult sci-fi. It is about these 2 people, Red and Blue. They are on opposite sides of a time war, in case you hadn't guessed that by the title, and they are both working to make it so that their side of the war is the one that ends up being the future of the world. But they also end up, like, having some encounters and falling in love along the way. I did read this physically. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was beautifully written. Like, the prose is just fantastic. I loved watching this interplay and banter relationship in these letters between Red and Blue. I really liked that. I liked kind of, like, if you're gonna just, like the thing you need to know about this book is there's not gonna be a lot of world building, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's not gonna be a lot of world building. It's mostly just romance and character vibes. Like, that's all you're getting. I thought she did a fantastic job with characterizing both of the main characters, because they're all we see, of making their letters different, distinct, building their relationship with each other and their relationship to their respective sides. I really liked the story. The ending was immaculate. It's not like one of those beautiful, tied with a bow, rosy endings, but at the same time, you know exactly what's going to happen next. That said, when it comes to the world building, there are places where they give us just either a little too much or a little too little. Like, they needed to pick a side. They either needed to decide that they were going to describe some of this stuff to answer the reader's questions, or they were not going to give us, like, much more than the fact that we've got 2 people, they are able to travel through time, and they are on opposite sides of this war. Like, we really didn't need more than that, and it does kind of go into some of the mechanics of their 2 sides and all of that, and I think that leaves people wanting, because they just, like, questions are raised that they're never answered, and they were never supposed to be answered in the context of this story, so I felt like maybe we shouldn't have raised those questions. I also, like, I feel like just, like, we just needed like 50 more pages and a little bit more drawn outness of the relationship between the 2 of them, because I thought we got to I'm in love with you a little bit quickly for my tastes. I was just like, we're only a few letters in, my friend, and you're in love with them? Are you 14? Is this the Jonas Brothers? Those are my 2 main issues. The fact that they just didn't really find a good balance for the world building in the story, because I don't think it needs it. I don't think it needs excessive world building because of the way the story is structured, but I can also see why people are sitting there going, there's not enough world building in here, because there are some places where I'm like, this was not explained well, but I'm just going to move past it because I'm going to focus on the main part of the story. The final book that I read in the month of June, technically I finished in July, but we're just like, it was like 20 pages, so we're gonna count it for June. But that was Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. This is an adult horror, I think. It was weird, but like in a good way. So this is about, oh god, again, this is about Vern. She is non-binary, but she uses she/her pronouns, and she has been raised in this cult. And she escapes the cult, pregnant with twins, and ends up giving birth and living out in the woods for several years, and then things start to go haywire. There's not a lot I can give you about this book without spoiling things, and I don't want to do that because I feel like this is one that all you need, like, there is a page where it gives you content warnings, and I would definitely, it's in the acknowledgments, I think, at the very beginning. No, it's in the author's note at the very beginning. No discussion in instances of racism, misogyny, self-harm, suicidality, and homophobia, inclusion of animal death and explicit violence, and references to sexual violence that have taken place off the page. So just know, going into it, those are in there, and don't know much else, because, like, I feel like the less you know about this, the better it, because I went into it not knowing much about it other than the fact that it is about a pregnant woman who escapes a cult. And it was just so wonderfully weird. I loved it. I think this is horror. And if this is, I think this might be my kind of horror. There are parts of it, like towards the end, there were some pacing issues for me that I just, like, it grated a little bit. There were certain things that I wanted to see happen. I would have liked to see a little less of one thing and a little more of another thing. And I can't really tell you what that was. So there was some pacing stuff. I will say, if you are not a fan of ruminative books, if you are not a fan of books that take their time building an aesthetic and an atmosphere and a mood, this may not be the book for you. We are getting a little bit about how Vern feels in this world, about why she is out here in the middle of the woods. And I like the way that Rivers of Solomon, the way they built to that. I like this kind of creepy thing that is going on in Vern's head because of things that have happened in the cult. There is a lot just sitting here, like, adding to this feeling of unease that also makes you be like, I need to know what happens next. Like, you're vaguely uncomfortable, but you also can't put it down. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good book, despite the pacing issues towards the end and the fact that the ending, it just, I understand what the author was doing with the ending, and I don't know necessarily that the ending that I want would have been healthy for the character, but at the same time, there were certain threads I wish I would have seen wrapped up a little bit more, a little bit better towards the end. So we have come to the end of the video, which means it is time for me to decide what my favorite and least favorite book of the month are. I think favorite book is not going to be hard for anyone to figure out, since it is the only book this month I gave 5 stars. That's obviously going to be I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown. It was just so good. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Please, just go read this book. My least favorite book of the month, I'm gonna have to say, was Makeup Breakup, just because, like, I didn't not enjoy this book, but it was work for me to enjoy this book, between the beginning not really working for me and the ending kind of falling flat for me. Like, it was a solid middle bit. But, like, there were definitely places, places in this book that I had issues with story or character or stuff, so I'm just least favorite of the month. If you are feeling chatty, feel free to go down to the comments and tell me your favorite book and your least favorite book for the month of June. Let me know what those are. If you are not feeling chatty, leave me a broken heart emoji, because Makeup Breakup broke my heart. We'll go with that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you want to support my channel, please check out some of the videos that I have over here. There are other things that I've done on my channel that you might enjoy as well. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button. It is a great way to get my little family to grow. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! You're gonna behave this time, right? Don't look at me with those eyes. You're gonna behave. Anyways. Yes, I talk to inanimate objects all the time.